With everything going on, we slithered away as fast as we possibly could. We heard all sorts of things cutting through the air as it whipped over top of us. We could see slow moving, some sort of gliding machines going through the air. What the hell was that? Also, we saw other things moving fast, some sort of chemically propellant driven explosive that seemed to be moving faster than our eyes could almost see. We could also hear solid projectiles ripping their way through the air as they went over top of us. As we looked up higher, we could see high flying machines sending their own munitions out, yet continuing to advance. And we heard something else, the sounds of the battleship cannons. The sounds finally reached us as the sheer echo of that thunder ripped through the air, and I was shaking so much in fear. I thought for a moment we were safe as we turned and looked, and we saw the shuttle waiting on the pad, the co-pilot waving us in as the engines were spinning up. We're saved, I said to myself, as the entire launch area began to explode, as all sorts of explosives started to find their way down and crash into those waiting and those trying to land or take off. A few did try to take off. The concussive wave of each of the explosives would force them to flip over and crash down hard. A single vertical takeoff landing aircraft was able to get in the air and was spinning around trying to pick us up. We believed this would be able to grab us and get us out. Then it was struck by something. There was a massive explosion and was sent spinning and crashing to the ground. I ducked as I didn't want to be struck as it hit and exploded, and shrapnel went everywhere. I looked around. I could see my brother. He was over there. What's going on? He was bloody. I ran over, but what was going on? I looked, and I could see something. Fire and metal pieces were in through my father. I noticed that whatever had hit him had perforated not only his first but also his second heart, tore one of his arms off, and gone straight through his scales. I don't remember much after that, except my brother yelling, "He's dead! We gotta go! We've gotta go now!" I was so distraught as he grabbed a hold of my arm and pulled me forward. I didn't come to my senses until something else crashed around us. Looking around, I could see the closest facilities that where we were on fire, and everything was exploding. Exactly where we were heading to was nothing but explosions, bursts of flames, and screams of pain as everyone was getting covered with all sorts of shrapnel, and others were being covered in fire. Others were trying to get equipment working to try and save themselves, but would find themselves at the victim of the same type of explosions. My brother pulled me sideways into the forest again, and we quickly made our way through the foliage as fast as possible. A quick slap to my face was enough to bring me back as I was being dragged forward. He is not a warrior, and I'm a female. So we rushed out as fast as we could to get away through all the dense forest, not stopping for water. We knew we had to make as much distance as possible. We wouldn't stop until we reached the villa that I was billeted in, at least what was left of it. We paused for a moment. We saw a more human aircraft, and that took us out of our shock. We rushed back into the forest again as fast as we could. My brother knew that there was a warrior base we could get to, and as we rushed, we could see those large aircraft had returned. They flew over our heads, but we watched and they had already started to bank away. We turned and looked. They had dropped more bundles, but so close to the ground. Why would they drop so many bundles? So many of them. Wait, those don't look like containers of some sort. As we watched them come down, we saw these same strange things start moving and then drop other items lower. We tried to avoid them by getting as far away as possible and going around the area. We could hear that sound in the distance, that sound that still haunts me, The sound of those ballistic cannons and the sound of the death orbs exploding. The ring of multiple of these shots fired in cyclic succession, and then the voices. There were the human voices. Oh, if we can hear them, they must be close. They must be getting closer and closer. With all the thermal interference, though, I can't find them. I can't lock onto them. I can't figure out how to avoid them. Oh, the screams from over there. The screams of the warriors. Some screaming for help, some screaming for assistance, some even screaming for mercy. But the screams of fear and pain as ballistics were used, and then the ballistics would silence the screams. We tried to go unnoticed through the woods. We tried to slither through each of the areas, and we tried to leave this place behind us. We tried to keep each other alive as we went. I failed. A thunder of ballistics fired, and my brother went limp. His hand was still in mine. It never had left. Yet when his body went limp, it pulled me down as these strange projectiles that the humans call bullets hit the foliage above me as I was pulled low. In his last moments, he saved me. Seeing that he was gone, I stayed as low as possible. I was rubbing my soft belly on the ground to keep from being seen, yet I had to get out. The only thing I could think of to stay hidden was to act the same way as the local fauna that was like us. I rushed. I rushed out for days. I kept moving away from that ocean. I wanted to stop, though. I wanted to rest. I wanted to sleep. I wanted to drink some more water without hearing those machines closing in. I kept going. I was getting scratched up by foliage, bitten by any type of insect or critter. Anything that walked, crawled, or flew seemed to want a piece of me. I was being stung by every single insect that came around. I eventually got so tired that as I reached an embankment, instead of stopping, I just slowed down a little and ended up falling down. And as I did, I ended up rolling into a body of water that was moving. This river, as they call it, seemed deeper than it looked. It simply grabbed me and pulled me down, smacking me against several different rocks. As it pulled me down, I tried as hard as I could to get to the other side. Normally we can swim, but in calm waters, and usually very shallow. But I kept going, and eventually I got to the other side. I pulled myself out, and on the edge of the river, I simply had no energy left. I fell asleep. I just couldn't go any further. I woke up later to the sound of the water. It was cold. So cold. I was just cold. I looked, and part of my tail was still in the water, and this must have been what was pulling the heat out of my system. I knew I had to move, so I began pulling myself as much as I could up, up onto the embankment. More. I had to get up on these rocks. Oh, the rocks. Oh, the rocks were so warm. They were so warm, and they warmed my body as I laid there. And as the sun beat down on me, warming my body, I fell back asleep. Once I awoke, I tried to stretch out as much as I could, being able to move. I tried to keep going. I knew I had to keep going. I couldn't stay here. But the problem is I was moving, but much, much slower. I didn't have much in the way of energy. Though I kept going, I couldn't go fast, so I was moving several planetary rotations, and I found a road that shouldn't be here. Our vessels don't leave this, but I decided I would have to follow it. I was just so tired of moving through all this foliage. I couldn't do it anymore. I had to go and move easier, and I was so hungry. So hungry. I don't even care anymore at that point if I got perforated by one of their ballistic weapons. I was so hungry I didn't care. I must have been on that road for a full day and night. When I stopped to rest, I noticed that my tail had gotten thin, scary thin. I realized I was almost out of nutrients. I'd burned through it so much. And once that's gone, the resulting starvation is quite painful. I have to keep going, though. It's either I keep going or I lay here and die. I won't lay here and die. But I just need a break. I must. I wake up. It's still dark, and my body is beginning to cool. The night is just fine to travel. My heat sensors can tell if something's around, so I guess I shouldn't have to worry. But I have to move. At dawn, I thought I could see something. What is that? Is that is that one of our observation towers? I rushed to it and cut across from the road towards the buildings. I burst out of the foliage and I find the entire area has been decimated. There's bodies of other Columbra, and they're just everywhere. I would check the vital signs of a few, but most of them, it was extremely obvious that they were simply gone, just simply perforated from front to back, side to side, or whatever it might be, many times missing large sections of their bodies and their entrails just sprayed across the ground. I moved slowly as I began to look for supplies. Maybe they had something on them. Most of them didn't carry any type of satchel, any type of pack. I was trying to look to see if there was a canteen anywhere, any type of cantina. There had to be one, yet every building was damaged. I didn't know what I was looking for. I'm not a warrior class, I'm a woman. What is going on? They don't usually have us out here. This is why I had somebody walking us around. I do see something. What is that? Is that a local domesticated fauna? Perhaps I could hunt it like my ancestors. Oh, but I have to be sneaky. Oh, it definitely sees me. I'm too large to be able to sneak up and jump at it. No. Oh, the animal keeps moving away. Oh, no, don't go that way. Come this way. Oh, how can I eat it when it keeps moving away? Perhaps if I get it between a few buildings. Yeah, that'll work. I can make it go into that courtyard. Oh, good. Good. Ah, yes. If it goes in there, it can't keep running away. Ah, yes, I move it towards the center. I finally got it cornered. Slowly, don't spook it too fast. I've only got one chance at this. I need to be ready to strike. What was that? Are those human voices? What? I look around, and every single window, every single portal has a human in it. And almost every single one of them is pointing a ballistic weapon at me. I lower my arms, and I accepted my fate. I waited for the pain. I waited for the sound. I waited for that horrible pinch of it going through my brain. There was nothing. I looked up to see one of them was standing right in front of me. It says something to another, and several of the group seemed to talk. I began to wish that my human was better. I'm standing there, just waiting to find out what they're going to do to me. One of the human grabs my tail, which is a great insult, but as I turn and look, the human is not doing anything crazy. He's simply examining it. The same one looks me over as another one is pulling out some sort of device and then pours a liquid into it. What? The one examining me goes to the one in charge and speaks. The one with the fluid walks over and hands me this strange gray metal container. I take it, of course, and it motions to me to drink. I take a sip. It's water. It's clean, fresh water. I hastily consume it as fast as I can, which seems to make the human almost jump a little bit. It may have just been water, but at the time, I had never, ever tasted anything more delicious. Elated with this, the human looked at me and simply reached up and took the container back from me. The one in charge said something without looking away, staring me right in the eyes, and then everything went dark. 4 days prior, Platoon Sergeant Bricken performs pre-combat checks and pre-combat inspections, and with everybody good to go, he heads to the tarmac. They weren't going to have to wait too long for their ride. You see, the cargo planes had already gone out to drop a certain payload, and when they came back, they were going to pick them up. They would only have to wait just a little bit longer until they came back. As they loaded the planes were being refueled at the same time, and everything went off with practiced precision. As the planes rumbled down the tarmac, he couldn't hear anything else except the rumble of those terrible engines. He looked over at his men, and some of them were praying, some of them slept. The rest kept their eyes pointed to the inside of the fuselage, seeming to lock their eyes in one spot as their mind began to wander. Bricken just hoped that the tech guys were right this time. His first battle with these reptilian assholes didn't go so well, although it went well at first. They had taken the enemy positions with a straight-up bayonet charge. Thankfully, the tanks and artillery kept the split lips from putting all sorts of continuous fire down. The skin in his thigh still itches when it rains when he took a hit from there. The enemy energy weapons burn like hell. They don't just burn deep enough, though, which is why it takes a couple of hits to the chest before they actually get deep enough. But when they do, they basically cook your lungs and your heart. It's not pretty. He looked at the black undergarments he was forced to wear. It's kind of like the old cold weather gear that they used to call silks. He just wishes that this stuff was just as comfortable as the silks themselves. Then again, it's probably the reason that he can still walk correctly. This stuff was designed specifically to take on the energy weapons and make them far less damaging, although it still hurts like a bitch. When they had hit the enemy trench lines, they struck like a horde of amphetamine-soaked circus monkeys, and things were going very well as they tore the enemy to pieces. They had almost taken the entire line, and the enemy had figured out to cut through the jammers. Then things got very, very nasty. The split lips had sent an orbital strike, and nobody knew it was coming at the time. Though not very effective at killing, it tossed everyone around like paper mache rag dolls, and that was definitely not fun. The split lips could have charged at that point, though when they saw us climbing up after being hit by an orbital strike, raising ourselves off the ground and groaning out of sheer pain, it must have looked like something straight out of a zombie movie. Since he had got to the trench a little bit late, he had enough momentum to personally jump on the commander with only the weapons he had left, his body. Eventually, beating the split lip down and then grabbing a rock, lifting it up and crushing down on the enemy commander's head. He looked up afterwards and saw a single one of the split lips had made it to the tree line and was slithering away. At this point, he was too damn tired and too damn injured to pursue. And now, pulled out of his memories by the waving of the hands, they flashed 10 minutes. It didn't matter how many operations he was on. Hearing those words make a pucker factor of over 9,000, and his pulse began to race like crazy. Eventually, he saw the signal, 5 minutes, and he thought, here we go. He heard the outdoor personnel stand up, inboard personnel stand up. Standing behind all his men, he looked forward and he saw the LT standing at the door, shaking almost uncontrollably. Hook up! They immediately snapped on their lines, pulled them down, and made sure, putting the line over the back of their arms to make sure nobody had any other problems during this jump. Check static line! A common occurrence, but hey, he checked to make sure his damn thing wasn't going to wrap around his arm and rip his freaking bicep muscle off. Check equipment! He knew this was getting close. He wiggled himself around, making sure he was ready to go. Everything was very heavy on him at that point, and his harness was very, very snug. But you know what? It's better to be snug than have the thing be loose and catch you right in the nuggets. Sound off for equipment check. Being in the back of the stick, he was the first one to slap the guy in the ass and go, okay! And he watched the wave go all the way up. And just as the LT got his slap, he was set at the door. Stand by! And at that point, everybody had a pucker factor over 9 million. As the green light turned on, you didn't have to say go, the LT was just out of the bird. Being a combat drop, they're only at about 500 feet, and the plane started shaking like crazy as he made his way through the door. Once he got out and was able to check his canopy, he saw that the plane itself was trailing smoke. Not a good sign. Immediately after that, he had to lower his equipment. At this point, he could see the plane banking away, trying to extinguish a fire, and then remembered, you weren't supposed to lower your equipment, dummy, we're going through the trees. Once he was on the ground, he began to head towards the rally point after getting his bearings. Where he was dropped off, he realized there was no GPS, even though he did carry one. He didn't even turn it on. He had to go very much old school, as the jammers were in effect. It affected not only the enemy ships, but his own equipment as well. He did carry some electronics, but they weren't going to do him any good. The drop itself was off because they couldn't use the GPSs. However, it wasn't nearly as bad as Normandy. As he made his way to the rally point, he passed other units to make sure everybody was going in the direction they were supposed to, and he collected a few of his own on his way. Each time they collected somebody, there was sporadic content intel that would come in. One of his men claimed that he saw two of the split lips slithering away. He got one of them, but the other one got low and eventually got away. Realizing that they had to get ahead of the retreating forces, they had to double time for the next few hours. When it got dark, immediately flipping on the nods. The jammers might be able to stop the radio transmission, but at least they got their night vision. Once those were down, they just kept going, even though it was a slower pace. Crossing the rivers in this part of the world is not fun, especially when you're in full kit. Although they thought they saw the body of a split lip on the shore. He pulled up his binoculars and was barely able to see if it was one, but you know what? He said, fuck 'em, we got an objective to take. Eventually, they made it to the objective, and everyone got in position, hiding in the tree line to make sure they hadn't been seen. They didn't have the cover of night at this point, and they had to take it soon. They had to use good old-fashioned violence of action, and that's what they were going to do, and they were going to do this by the numbers. They called in the artillery, and once they were able to dial it in, they called in for a fire for effect. And right behind that, they called down a good old-fashioned shake and bake, which is high explosive followed by Willie P. The HE rounds blew most everything to pieces, but those who were running for cover ended up getting caught by the white phosphorus and were immediately caught on fire, many of them screeching as they tried to put the fire out, not realizing they should be just covering themselves with mud. With a second volley after the repeat, they advanced, and they advanced extremely fast. The remainder of the platoon advanced with him on either side. He was hoping that he could maybe get the LT. Unfortunately, the LT didn't survive the drop. He got perforated by a tree. Unfortunately, so did 4 others in his platoon, which left him undergunned, however, not outgunned in this point. They cleared the entire fire base in a matter of minutes. They used thermal grenades to destroy the remainder of the equipment so it couldn't be used. At that point, they had to sit and wait. They set up their defense. Their orders were to take and hold the base after all. So they simply secured it as best they could. They had to stop the enemy from a counterattack, so that's exactly what they were going to do. Getting in certain positions that will make any gamer think that they're just camping, but no, This is why the defense always has a better outcome, at least if you're ready for it. But they were there for several days waiting for any of their forces to catch up. One of the squad leaders woke him up to say, "Hey, someone's coming." And they immediately spread the word, whispers in the dark. "Someone's coming, someone's coming." Eventually, they understood this and got in position just as the light of day was coming up. But just as they saw something slither out of the woods, the platoon sergeant thought something was wrong. There was only a single split lip, but this one looked different. It didn't take long to see what the difference was. This one was female. That was odd. They only send males to the battlefield. They have this strange way of doing things. Then again, who are we to talk? Sending hand signals, he made a point to let everyone know to hold until he fired first. He would be the one to fire. "Don't you dare," he said, straight to his machine gunner to make sure that he did not get a little trigger happy and try to slice this lizard in half. Everybody just stays hidden and waits. The platoon sergeant watches. He watches as the skinny female slithers its way through the carnage. He watched as it went to certain bodies and looked at them, and then passed by others, sometimes picking up a small satchel looking to see what's inside, but still kept going. Then it started looking over at a couple of the buildings, some of which were still smoldering even after a few days. Eventually, they see it zero in on an adolescent alpaca. It seemed as though it was trying to hunt an alpaca but didn't know what to do, and eventually it started to simply corral it to the central courtyard. It was easy to see what it was doing. It was trying to trap it. The split-lipped looked like hell. It was half-starved, covered in cuts and bruises, just as she was also getting ready to strike as she cornered the alpaca. She coiled up underneath her, and then, "Can we help you, miss?" She looked at him, looked around, saw everyone, and just seemed to give up. Her coils seemed to loosen and just lay there. Her arms dropped to her side, and she was just there, lowered her head and closed her eyes. After telling his men to keep his weapon on her, he goes out to check. He looks her over, and she looks terrible. Her hair is full of debris, though they don't have much hair to start with. There's dried blood all over her. It looks like it's mostly from her, with small scratches everywhere. There's mud covering almost all of her, and she looks incredibly thin. They try to communicate, but no response. She just kind of stands there. Then he pulls back and talks to his squad leader. And then, Doc, get over here. Check her out. "Hey, you guys, watch over Doc. She makes a move, you know what to do." Another squad leader comes up and looks at her. "Hey, give her some water, man." With that, the squad leader pulls out his canteen, pops out the canteen cup, fills it up, and hands it over to her. She's hesitant to grab it, but when she does, she simply holds it and looks at it. He motions for her to drink. Though hesitant, she takes a sip, realizes what it is, and then slams all the water down, making the squad leader, "Wah!" No, try to say, "Don't drink all at once, you'll end up throwing up." But she didn't understand what the hell he was saying. With that, the platoon sergeant looks at her, tries to figure out what to do, comes to a decision, and turns back. The light seems to be coming back into her eyes after getting a little bit of water into her system. She seems to stand just a little bit straighter. He asked Doc, "Hey, is she good? I mean, can she travel? Because I'm pretty sure they'd love a live prisoner." The doc gives an affirmative. And as he turns back towards this strange creature in front of him, he walks forward, keeps his eyes on her, and the third squad leader that had walked up behind her. "I want a live prisoner, but I don't want her watching." "Roger." With that, the squad leader butt strokes her in the back of the head, and she collapses in a heap. They begin to tie her up as Doc makes sure she's still alive, and then drag her inside for Doc to look over much more thoroughly. About the time she's fully secured to the wall, one of the men come up and tell the platoon sergeant that they see a couple helicopters in the distance. The platoon sergeant yells, set up the inverted Y. This was a signal for the air support where they could land, and he was not going to waste any opportunity to let them know that they've secured the area. As they waited, they realized that the tech guys must have been able to jam the enemy for a lot longer than expected. They half expected their position to be coming under fire from those whatever type of ships are up there. But for some reason, they're not firing down at all. And this is a very, very good thing. I woke up in this strange rhythmic sound in the background. I looked down at myself and I was covered with adhesive coverings. Was this their version of a bandage? Some areas wrapped me completely in some sort of strange gray textile that seemed to be very, very stretchy. I tried to move, and yet, what the hell is this? Oh, I'm bound to the ground. I guess I'm a prisoner now. I keep trying to move. One of the humans motions for me. I think that means stop, as in stop moving. Then he calls something. What is that? Why do they keep saying the same thing? What is a doc? What is doc? What is that? I don't understand. The same one I seen before that was examining me came in, along with a much older one. Was he in charge? An elder, perhaps. I I don't know. He's right behind them, and he keeps seeming to ask a bunch of questions. I mean, I can feel this human. It must be some sort of healer, I think. It seemed to be pushing against certain parts over and over again. Every time I show that it's a little uncomfortable, it seems as though he picks up some strange piece of parchment and seems to dictate it down somewhere. While he's continuing to check me out, I receive more water. Oh, thank the great maker. Oh, great water. The older human was contacted by another one of these humans, and then they both simply left. Outside, the helicopters are spinning down their engines as equipment is being offloaded. The platoon is busy rearming themselves, reloading themselves with MREs, topping off with whatever they need. That is, after they loaded the wounded. They received a few replacements as well. The platoon sergeant was talking with his squadron commander. Hey, we got one alive. Really? Yeah, you want to see her? Wait, her? They entered the room where the female was chained to the wall, and the warrant officer and a few of his own crew chiefs just stood there staring at her, started to ask all sorts of questions. What are you going to do with her? Is she dangerous? Why is there a female out here on the battlefield? We've never had any reports of females on the battlefield, not from their side anyway. Where, where can we take her? Eventually, they confirmed a plan and would send one of their helicopter back to relay the information. Unfortunately, the jamming system was still in effect, so everything was done via courier. The Black Hawk immediately spun up as fast as possible and lifted off, screaming through the sky as fast as possible. And when the helicopter left, they kept the Snake on double guard, both guards always staring at her. However, every once in a while, one would reach down to simply touch part of her. Most of the time, it was on the tail. It was though they were interested, and they simply petted to see if it was like an actual snake. They did say the word snake over and over and over again. She believed this was some sort of demonstrative way of speaking to her. However, she didn't take it personal. She did wonder why every once in a while one of them would walk up and seem to squeeze her torso, specifically on her upper torso, just below the neck. It was odd. Yet if they were ever caught doing something like this, they immediately were screamed at and told to leave. When the Black Hawk returned, it did not return alone. It had a pair of MH6s, killer eggs, one on each side flanking it, and with them an entire SF squad. They looked in on the prisoner. A few recommended they just kill her and get it over with a bit of a standoff between those that wanted a prisoner and those that just wanted to execute it. However, cooler heads prevailed, and the call was made to bring her back for intel. Oh, I see them fighting over me now. These are new humans. I haven't seen them before. Why are they arguing? I just wish they'd put me somewhere warmer. I'm cold. So cold. It's making me very, very lethargic. I mean, I barely even notice the humans fighting. I don't even care how their hands keep touching me. I mean, at least their hands are warm. I then what's happening? What was that device they brought in? What is that? What is he poking at? What is it? It's pressing buttons. What's going on? What's that sound? What the what he's speaking into it. What? Did it just talk? Wow, that's a strange, almost proper dialect. At least it's recognizable. Oh, it's recognizable as my language. Oh, the words are simple, though. You, us taken, follow us repair, Calubra, no fight, stop safe, affirm. I was amazed that the humans could translate any of our language. It doesn't sound anything remotely like any of theirs. I tried to give a motion to let them know, but the only one I know is swaying my head back and forth and lifting my back. That's how we affirm things. These creatures, they seem confused, but they're telling me to get up now. Outside, the helicopters are spun up and the snake is brought outside. On all sides, she's flanked by those, as she would put it, large ballistic cannons. She paused a little as the sun hit her, and she seemed to enjoy it. It didn't take long for everyone to realize that she was extremely cold-blooded. Though they believed since she looked partially human, they thought she might be slightly homeothermic. Now they understand how cold-blooded she actually is, and she needed to warm up. They didn't have the time nor the fuel to waste, which is why all the helicopters were immediately turned off when they landed. She was escorted to the ramp of the Chinook. She looked at it as though it was odd, and everyone wondered if she was going to pause or do anything. When the heat of the engines hit her, everyone had to stop for a second. She didn't know what to do. She seemed agitated. Everyone was worried. Everybody started taking their safeties off as they were supposed to do something, but it's not like she was attacking them. She was simply moving around. It was though she couldn't understand which way to go, which way to turn. She was simply just there moving kind of strange. They realized it was the heat. It was the heat that was messing her up, and she was freaking her out. With so much heat so fast, it was clear. I mean, any snake, if you hit that much heat that fast, their internals are going to go nuts. With that little problem solved by simply raising their arms in front of her face to make sure the heat was deflected away, she simply got her bearings and was brought inside. Their strange devices put out so much heat. I was not ready for that. Oh, I couldn't tell which way to go. I couldn't tell where anyone was. I was grateful for the human to defend me from whatever that was. Oh, I never want to be in that much heat so much ever again. Oh, I'm grateful for that, so I could simply go inside. My captors had bound my arms. I wasn't going anywhere. I was too tired anyway. I hadn't fully warmed up yet. I was able to get inside this strange contraption. What were they going to do to me? They haven't been hostile. Well, not very hostile yet. I looked, I turned, and I could see the old man was not getting in. I reached out, but they grabbed my arms and pulled them down, and I found one of those ballistic weapons pushed into my face, and I got scared. I, I didn't want to. What's going on? I looked, and I could see the old man motioning, simply raising his arms in a way to say, "Calm down, relax." I saw the strange way the bottom was. It raised, it seemed to close around us. I looked, the humans weren't afraid, so I decided I needed to relax. As the device I was in began to shake horribly, I got down low and I tried to use my coils to grab onto anything I could. I knew this was not going to be fun. Their primitive technology was going to make for a bumpy ride. Oh no. Oh, we're up in the air now. Where are they taking me? Back on the ground, Platoon Sergeant asked the pilots around him about the timeline. Oh, we just got the word. Everybody's reached phase line Wendigo. We move out to phase line Chupacabra in 41 minutes. The platoon sergeant turned to his squad leaders. You heard him. Let's get back to doing what we do best.